Hello boys and girls, I'm back for another deck tech, and today I figured I'd show you a modern deck that I've been working on for quite some time. I've been working on this deck probably ever since Birthing Pod got banned, because being a Birthing Pod player myself, I was very unhappy when it got banned, so I figured there had to be another deck that was very similar, and so, loving all the combos within Birthing Pod, I figured I'd try using the second best thing at the time that got banned. So this deck here is Greater Good. Like Birthing Pod, this is a combo deck that is very creature-centric. It runs off of the classic Birthing Pod combos, but it actually runs a lot more in addition to that, in addition to infinite life, infinite damage. You can also get an infinite powered creature and infinite cards. As you can tell from looking at the main list, it's got a lot of similar things, like the Kitchen Finks, the Murderous Redcap. Malira's in here somewhere. There she is right there. But it's a fun list. I've actually been working on it for a few years now. It's been a while putting it all together, and to be honest, I still haven't quite finished the sideboard, but I figured since the main deck was done, I figured I'd show it off and see what everyone thought of it, because considering I'm surprised Greater Good is not played in Modern as much as I'd like it to be, I'm surprised decks like this haven't really caught on to the rest of the meta. So without any further ado, let's dive into the deck. So considering it's not played a whole lot in Modern, Greater Good is I guess you could say, one of the core pieces of the deck that really makes it run. It doesn't need it, but it definitely helps a lot because it is how we can get infinite life and, technically speaking, infinite cards. Greater Good, in case you don't know, is an enchantment for 2 and 2 green, and it has an activated ability of sacrifice a creature, draw cards equal to that sacrificed creature's power, then discard 3 cards. As you can tell, this is another sack outlet, so this is absolutely nuts with things like Malira, Sylvok Outcast, and Kitchen Finks on the table. You might be wondering why play Greater Good over something like Collected Company. The reason is because a lot of things that answer Collected Company don't answer Greater Good. At the same time, you can argue a lot of things that answer Greater Good don't answer Collected Company. After all, Greater Good isn't a permanent. But after all, Greater Good is an enchantment, and enchantment removal isn't always the most common, simply because not all colors have a good amount of access to it. Seriously, I'm not really sure why this card hasn't seen a whole lot of play. It just gets you so much value with all the combos in this deck. Because this is a combo deck, another big part of the core is Quarter Calling. We have a lot of creatures, and so convoking this is really, really easy, usually just to find that missing piece to get a combo going. And like I say, there's a lot of combos in this deck, so it's pretty easy to do something pretty degenerate pretty consistently. Next, I'd like to show you the 2 playsets of creatures that I run. I run a full set of Kitchen Finks. As I stated before, Kitchen Finks is a big part of what generates the infinite life combos in this deck. It's a wonderful creature, very hard to get rid of. You usually have to exile it to get rid of the value it produces. And also here we have a full set of Birds of Paradise. I run Birds of Paradise just because this is a 4-color deck, and we need all the colors of mana we can. Now, if you have them and you're thinking about making a deck like this, Noble Hierarch is a very good card as well. Provides 3 colors, so it's not going to provide the 4th color you'll need, which is black, but it's still really good, provides the Exalted boost, and it is a fine replacement for Birds of Paradise. If you don't want to spend an arm and a leg on mana dorks, you can always run Arbor Elf if you run Shocklands. If you don't run Shocklands, you may want to try Avacyn's Pilgrim, or I guess the best substitute then would be Llanowar Elves. Next up, we have a ton of one-of creatures, but a lot of them fulfill the same role. The first of these are the 3 creatures that keep Kitchen Finks on the table when its persist wouldn't work. And these 3 creatures are Anafenza and Malira, which are pretty popular in Modern. But we also run 1 copy of Master Biomancer, just as an extra, and also if the game gets really grindy, he usually ends up being a lot better than the other 2 if we can't get a combo going, simply just because all our creatures just get really, really big. And if we have Biomancer on the table with the Kitchen Finks and a Greater Good, we can actually generate some card advantage just by drawing 4 cards each time we use Greater Good. As I said before, we do run a Murderous Redcap. Just for the infinite damage loop. If we get Greater Good and the Kitchen Finks, we can keep drawing until we get the red cap, get a bunch of life. While it may seem like overkill to some, we do run 1 Archangel of Thune. You could argue we could also try the Spike Feeder just to kind of have a synergy there, and you can use that. I don't run that simply because I think Kitchen Finks does enough already. honestly, I just like to have the Angel around just to have a big grindy creature, and even without like Kitchen Finks, we still have other ways to gain life, including the Angel itself. Next up, you could say, is our kind of our toolbox creatures, in a sense. They're actually just there when we need them in case of certain scenarios. We have Eternal Witness just to get something back. We usually have to cord for it, but that's nice. Reclamation Sage when we really need to get rid of that artifact or enchantment we dislike. And Sin Collector and Entomber Exarch to do some hand attacking. Entomber Exarch also gives us back a creature if we lose a creature that we needed for our combo. It is really nice. Next up, we have some nice, interesting, supportive creatures. We have a 1 Wall of Roots for some little additional ramp. It also pays for 2 mana in your Court of Calling and is a good blocker against aggro decks. We have 1 Zulaport Cutthroat. This is just there due to the fact that we sacrifice a lot of creatures, and if in the right scenario we can get an infinite loop going with Kitchen Finks, we can also kill our opponent at the same time. Viscera, Seer, and Nantuko Husk just act as additional sack outlets. Seer is nice because we can scry to what we need, and Husk is nice if we have it out before we start our sacrificing loop with a persist creature. We can do a lot of damage with it if our opponent has no blockers. I almost forgot to mention that there is 1 copy of Ulamog the Infinite Gyre in the deck. This is mainly there for when we are comboing off with our greater good activations and a persist creature, where if we need to get a card back into our library that we really need, we can actually just discard the Ulamog and get our whole graveyard back into our library. Also, it's really good against decks that try to mill us to death. Next up, we have some nice disruption here. Our full set of Thoughtseize. This is supposed to be for unfair matches. You don't really care about the life, and you want to just get rid of all the degenerate things your opponent is doing. You usually will have a way to get back the life. We have quite a few ways to get the life back. And one of your, I guess you could say, kind of a catch-all, Abrupt Decay for the little things that are hard to deal with, also nice against blue decks, and Maelstrom Pulse, just to hit those things that nobody really considers, and really kind of just a nice catch-all overall. So our mana base is kind of ridiculous. Just because we run 4 colors, we need to run a lot of variety in our lands. We'll start out with the shocks, I suppose. We'll start with Breeding Pool, Godless Shrine, Temple Garden, Watery Grave, and we run 2 copies of Overgrown Tomb. Green and black are probably the most common colors, so these are pretty stellar, which is why we run 2 over the others. We have a couple of the battle lands. We have a Prairie Stream, and we also have a copy of Canopy Vista. Just nice because sometimes you may not want to cast anything, and you can fetch one of these first if you need to, or get it into play untapped if you have some basics. We run a fair amount of basics. But before I go into the basics, I'll show you that we do run 8 fetches, not 7. I'm running Verdant Catacombs and Windswept Heaths, but you can run whatever you like as long as it gets you the mana you need. A couple colorless lands. We run Gavany Township and a Ghost Quarter. Some people would probably advise that I run more than 1 Gavany. I think that's not a bad idea. I just only have 1 at the moment. And honestly, it's been working fine for me in the games that I have played. And just 1 Ghost Quarter just to get rid of the pesky lands that we may encounter. And we run 6 basics. We run 4 forests, a plains, and a swamp. Moving right along to the sideboard. This personally is not the sideboard in general. After all, it's only 9 cards, and I could run more if I wanted to. But these are just some of the things I've been using. Like I say, I've been working on this deck for quite some time, and so the sideboard options have rotated out quite a bit. Starting top right, we run some copies of Duress. You can also run a copy of any other hand attack spell you might find appropriate, or even card sniping like a Surgical Extraction. I honestly haven't tried Surgical Extraction in this deck yet, but Duress has been working fine for me in the games I have played. Phyrexian Revoker, I'm honestly not the biggest fan of Phyrexian Revoker. I just like to run it because we can cord for it. I've always kind of been more of a fan of Pithing Needle just because Revoker has a lot more things that can kill it. But in this scenario, and for this deck, considering we run Court of Calling, Revoker does come in handy when we really need to stop that activated ability at instant speed. So it's kind of like a stifle that we can have in our deck if we need it. Spellskite's just there for matchups like Infect and Bogles. Just great against anything that targets things. Like we said, we can use it as a target magnet to divert spells and abilities to it if need be. If you know you go up against monocolor decks, you can use something like Shriekmaw. Shriekmaw is not bad when you need a creature. Considering you can evoke Shriekmaw, I'm actually debating whether I like Shriekmaw or Necrotol in that slot. Moving right along, have more hand tack on the bottom right there with another Sin Collector. You can run a Reclamation Sage. Some people may want to run Kasali Pride Mage because that's a activated ability and not a triggered ability, but really lately in the meta there really hasn't been a whole lot of ability hate, so I don't really think right now it's really a big deal what you use. You just use whatever you like. Against Control, we have Voice of Resurgence, just one of the most annoying cards ever printed. Control players hate it. It's a pain in the butt to get rid of, and it just gives you a lot of value. You can also sacrifice it for a really big creature, and considering we run a lot of creatures, all those little tokens you have will probably be gigantic. And finally, we run a few more copies of Maelstrom Pulse and Abrupt Decay. And, depending on what you're up against, if you play against things like blue, Abrupt Decay is definitely the way to go. And if you play against things that run a lot of bulky permanents and or permanents that are hard to deal with and don't really have that many targets on their head, Maelstrom Pulse is the card to go to. Although I don't really have them right now, another couple cards I'd recommend for this sideboard would probably be Aethersworn Canonist, if you know you go up against things like Storm Combo. And also Aven Mind Sensor if you go up against things like Scapeshift or any other deck that likes to tutor for stuff. And that is the deck. This is Greater Good, a deck that I'm surprised that uses a lot of cards that are not very popular in Modern, and I'm not really sure why, just because they provide such great value. Like I said, this is a wonderful combo deck. If you loved playing Birthing Pod back in the day, this is a great deck to go to. Like I said, this deck runs a lot of combos, so much so that it just really goes to town with it. And it's really quite a fun experience, and it's just actually neat how many combos you can pull off. And like I say, this is just my list. If you like the idea behind this list, there's several other great creatures you can run. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this deck tech, and I hope you've learned something today. Don't forget to like and subscribe, as everyone does deserve to have the knowledge of Magic the Gathering, and doing so will help get this video out there to everyone else who is looking for a deck like this.
Thank you all so much for watching. My name is Rita Spector, and I'll see you all next time.